Elizabeth, wedding photographer based in San Diego. I thought it would be really interesting today to do a video about the 8 wedding photography myths or misconceptions. These are things that I will hear people say, and I'm like, okay, yeah, and just smile and nod, but I'm like, that's not true, at least not for me. So some photographers might not feel the same way that I do, but these are at least like the things that I hear, and I'm like, where did that come from? I'm like, that's not right. So this is gonna be a video about that. So maybe you guys have thought some of these things. This is not bad for thinking that, because there's things like maybe I would make assumptions about like what a nurse has to deal with or what like a businessman has to deal with, and maybe it's totally wrong. But it's just like you don't know these things until you work it or until like you learn more about it from the source itself. So the first one is that whenever it is like overcast outside, all the time, guests or bridal party members are like, yeah, but like cloudy days are supposed to be better, right, for photos? And I'm like, yep. Because first of all, I don't want anybody to feel sad that their wedding was cloudy, but I am not the kind of person who likes necessarily to shoot on a really heavy overcast day. I don't love like full blazing sun, 0 clouds in the sky, which is usually what San Diego is. I love like a very partially cloudy, so sometimes we get a little softer light, but the sun is still very much there. I don't think that cloudy days are better because they create very strange shadows and highlights. So typically, because it's so diffused, and this is a very heavy overcast day. This isn't like very mild cloud coverage. This is where it's just very, very gray, which is typically May and June in San Diego, unfortunately. So basically what happens is a lot of times like the cheeks will be super bright, the tops of things are really bright, so the top of the flower is really bright, the chests are bright, and then the shadow parts are very shadowy because it's so diffused. It's like this weird bit of shadow. So that's not something that I love to work with. I work with that quite often, but it's not better. I would totally rather have the sun. I love working with the sun because you can create beautiful like lighting, a rim light around like the bride's hair. It's just like more dimension when there's sun, and I'm not one of those photographers who's afraid of the sun. I would much rather have the sun out because it allows me to work with the lighting that I love the most. So throughout this, I've put up some photos of those examples. You guys can see some photographers really like cloudy days. I used to think it was much easier to shoot in that, and in some ways it is, but it just does not produce the results that I want. It makes everything a little bit more dreary looking, a little bit more desaturated, and I want a little bit more life in my photos. I can't control the sun, and for photos, I have to work with what I'm given on wedding days. We can't reschedule, but it's something that I hear all the time, and I'm like, that's not necessarily true, at least for me. So that is a big myth when it comes to shooting in overcast days and having a lot of clouds. That's just not what I want. Now the next one is like, you would think that because of the one I just mentioned about clouds that I wouldn't be saying this, but there's this myth that like rain ruins your photos. And again, while rain is not at all ideal, it's even less ideal than cloudy days, it will not ruin your photos. So rest assured, if it's super cloudy on your wedding day or if it's raining, it is not the end of the world. I have seen some really, really cool photos. Like I've never had to shoot a wedding in the rain somehow, and being in San Diego, it's so rare, but I've seen some beautiful photos where it's especially at night and they're backlit by flash so you can see all of the raindrops. It's really romantic. It's part of your day, part of your story. That can be so cool. Also, if you have umbrellas, you can do really cute photos with umbrellas. You can do beautiful indoor shots, or you can do gorgeous photos in things that are covered but kind of open air in a sense. So it's not the end of the world if it is raining. Yes, it's unfortunate, but like there's nothing you can do about it. So I always say like we're gonna make the most out of it. It's gonna be super positive still. We're not gonna let it get to us. And again, it's not ideal, but it is not the end of the world. The next one I hear is one that I'm like, oh, why? And it is when somebody's like, oh, you can just Photoshop that out, right? And I'm like, no, I can't. My job is to get everything right in camera, okay? It is so much faster to move a trash can or move a piece of trash or fix the bride's hair a little bit or fix the dress in person than it is in Photoshop to edit those images, all of those images, especially if you're removing things from photos. That takes a lot of time. I did not become a wedding photographer to become a professional retoucher. I want to focus on the photos and not heavy photoshopping. So when people say you can just Photoshop that out, right? I'm like, no, I can't just do that. It would take hours, and doing them for all those photos, I would have to like charge an hourly rate for that. And it might be so very difficult to Photoshop, I might have to outsource it to somebody who is a professional retoucher. So sometimes I'll hear people say this like, oh, well, you can see her bobby pins, or there's some like acne I didn't cover up, like the hair and makeup artist will say this, like you can just Photoshop that, right? And I'm like, thanks for like throwing a bunch of extra work on my plate, but no, I can't do that. Like fix everything in person and use Photoshop as a last resort. That is my philosophy. That is the best time-saving thing. That is the most effective thing to do. It's the least lazy thing in a way. I've heard people say, oh, I'll just Photoshop out the trash can. I'm like, but you could just move it and then you don't have to spend hours Photoshopping it. So I just like hear that all the time and I'm like, it's not just like 1, 2, 3 click. Like sometimes even simple things can take like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and more extensive things could take hours to work on. So it's not like super simple. I know everybody thinks sometimes like it's just a quick fix. It's really not. It's better to get it right in person. The next one is that more photos is more. I disagree with that. I think that when you have like, so for example, I personally would rather receive 500 wedding photos than 1,500 wedding photos for an 8-hour day. Because I think a lot of times when the photographer does not cull as selectively, that the final gallery can be a little bit watered down with a lot of like mediocre or unflattering photos. I think less is more. I think quality over quantity. Okay, I feel like even the amount that I deliver for an 8-hour day, which is like 650 to 850 photos, that's plenty. Like that's more than enough, but I think that that gives them options. But I do think that less is more. I would rather deliver fewer photos that are way better, but still capture everything about the day. I'm not leaving out something they would want to see, than delivering more photos from each little scenario where some are like clearly not nearly as good as others. So I am on the philosophy that less is more. I think that more is something we often want in today's society, but it is not always a good thing. I would so much rather have fewer. Every single time I have been given photos that have been professionally taken of me or of David and me, I have always culled out like a large percentage of what they've given me, put them in a rejects file, and just kept the ones that I felt like were the only ones that we would ever want to do anything with. So I think less is more. Again, like it's less overwhelming to look through them all, and the quality is probably going to be better. If somebody's like, yeah, I deliver 3,000 photos from an 8-hour day, I would be very hesitant to book that kind of a person, and I certainly would not think that that's a great thing, because what that says to me is they're probably keeping every single photo, like photos that are unflattering, photos where you're blinking, photos that are complete duplicates of other things, or bad angles when they have great other angles that they could use instead. So that's kind of my philosophy. That's all I'm going to say about that. One that is like really funny, I don't hear that often. I mostly see it on people tearing apart photographers' pricing on forums, which I just made a video all about photographers' pricing. I will link that up here. And it is, oh, like a photographer who charges $5,000 for their 8-hour collection, they make $5,000 in 8 hours. No, we do not do that. I wish we did that. That would be so incredible, but we do not. First of all, we have to pay taxes. Second of all, we have to pay our team members. I have to pay for film. I talked about a lot of my expenses in that video. I definitely don't make $5,000 or $5,500 or $6,000 in 8 hours. It is far, far less than that. And also, we are spending probably at least 40 hours with every single couple, not just 8. So sometimes people like forget about all the other work that you do and all the editing things after the wedding, and they only like think that it's the 8 hours that you're there on the day and that's all the time you spend. So it's just kind of like funny to me, and like I wish that what you were saying wasn't a myth, but it totally is. The next one is like that photographers spend all of their time like photographing. I think that personally I spend about only 10 to 20%, depending on the season, of my work week or of my working month shooting. Most of the time, I am at my computer, I'm researching, I'm emailing, I'm blogging, I'm filming, I'm doing my social media, I am working on like all sorts of things on my computer, and then I am shooting only a little bit of that time. That's just the way it goes. Like most of us spend a lot of time at our desk. Unfortunately, I feel like my wrist always clicks because I'm constantly like typing. It just clicked now, and it's just something like I wish I was shooting more, but that's just how it works. Like you have so much more work that's in the office than you do that's out in the field shooting. Now the last one is one that I hear like all the time, and I'm like, that is so not true. And it is that all the brides that like we as photographers in general get are bridezillas. That is so not true, at least for me. the clientele that is attracted to me are almost never bridezillas. Like I don't think I would ever have had a bride that I would say is a bridezilla. I've had a few brides that I would say were a little bit more difficult than the others and micromanaged a little bit too much. I have a whole video on micromanaging and why you shouldn't do it up here. But I don't really work with bridezillas. Like I just don't get them. They don't come to me. So I think that there's this fear, especially among photographers who don't shoot weddings, that all weddings are going to be really stressful and like you're going to be working with really demanding bridezillas and really like awful people. And I'm like, no, that's not true. The wedding day is so happy. People are so thrilled to be there and it is a positive, joyful occasion. So it's never like this crazy thing. As long as the wedding is well planned, typically has a coordinator or a planner and the people are happy and positive, it's usually a really great and easy day. So it's like never really the case that I get a scary bride or somebody who makes me just want to like not do my job anymore. That is so rare. In 82 weddings I've done, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 people that I wish that I had not worked with, and it was because they were kind of rude and like really controlling, but even then I wouldn't call them bridezillas. So that's pretty much it. Those are the 8 myths and misconceptions for wedding photography, at least from my experience. Other photographers might feel differently about like shooting on cloudy days or delivering like way more photos, but that's just how I feel. So I hope that this video was like something that is interesting for you guys because it's a little bit different. But anyways, I will see you guys next time. Bye!